Apologies for the delays. Second, let's struggle with us. So happy Sabbath. We're going to begin with the order of prayer and invite us to pray. Let's pray. Our dear God in heaven, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the gift of fellowship, and we ask you to forgive us our sins this day, and may you accept our worship throughout the day. For this is our prayer in Jesus' name. So it's good to see you all after a while. And for today morning, I just wanted us to look at one verse. So I'm going to invite your participation for this class, and it's a common verse, but I think we might have insights when we look at it together. So, and that verse is Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. So I'll invite us to go to that verse, and someone can read it for us. Daniel chapter 12, verse 3.
It says, and they shall be wise, shall toil as the brightness of the firmament, and they that hand with righteousness is stars forever. Yes.
Yeah. So that's a common verse that uh, we have encountered several times in the movement. And the different ways the different points that we usually make this verse. So I'm just going to, because this is a refresher, I'm just going to mention the two ways in which we look at this verse. So the verse, Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, talks about some people. First of all, the setting is the end of time, because this is Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. If someone could read it so that we could get a bit of context.
12:1.
Yeah.
And at that time shall Michael stand up and great kings and standard for the children of them. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was seen then, was a nation, such as never was seen. There was a nation even to that same time. And at that time, the people shall be delivered, and everyone that shall be found is at.
Yeah, so you can have it now. So which time period is this? It's the end of time, right? Epi? End of the world. And at the end of the world, we get to verse 3, and the chapter talks about some wise people. And it says at that time they shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So the refresher is We usually look at this verse using repeat and enlarge to understand who the wise people are. So what you do is say that the wise people are those that turn many to righteousness. So, and because we know those that turn many to righteousness are teachers, we make the application and say the wise people, the wise being talked about here, are teachers. Are we good? That's clear. There's also another approach where we get to the same conclusion. So if someone has the concordance, you can check for us the meaning of wise in the concordance. So someone could check that for us. Is anyone? Sorry, yeah.
Page. What's making it?
H.
Page 17.
H 17.
BGB definition
Uh-huh.
to be prudent. To be prudent, be circumspect. I don't know what you wisely understand. Prosper. The Strongs.
Yeah.
To be circumspect. Hence intelligent.
I'm looking for something else.
There's another part in BDB. To cause, to consider, give insight, teach. The teachers, the ones.
Yeah. So you say the J said to cause?
To cause, to consider,
Uh-huh.
to give insights, to teach.
Cause to consider. Give insights. Teach. So we have used a different way coming to the same conclusion that the wise in Daniel 12 verse 3 talks about teachers, right? So that comes to what we're going to talk about today. And that is, I find it interesting that the teaching is connected with the word wise, and I don't know why, and probably that's why we need to discuss it today, so that at the end of the class, I get to a better understanding, or we get to a better understanding as to why wisdom is connected to teaching. I'd rather not use a plus sign, but maybe a sign that's like it's connected. So do we have any thoughts so far? Why do we have that link? Any thoughts? Joe, why do you think wisdom is connected to teaching?
Um, I think the simple sense that teaching involves getting rid of ignorance. I think the only way you can do that is if the one who's doing it will add themselves not ignorant. So they have possess some wisdom.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Gladys, what do you think? Yeah. Any thoughts? You agree with Joe? Okay. So I'd like us to look into that a bit more in detail. That's what we're going to do during the class. So the Bible is quite a successful book, and that's evident because the Bible is the most translated book in the world, and it's translated into, I think, almost every language that exists today. It's found everywhere. Like nowadays, even in hotels, you find a copy of the Bible. So in a certain perspective, it can be considered as a very successful book. And why do we think the Bible is that successful? Max, why is the Bible such a successful book?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if the success, the popularity, or the achievement of the purpose of the business is how are you defining
Success, yeah. So who can answer that? But like quickly, I think it depends on who you're asking, right?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. That's so. So if you're asking how they call linguists. Okay. If you're asking a writer, they're going to say that it's a very successful book, right? Because what does a writer look at? Looks at how many the like publications, how many publications are there, and they look at translations, the reach of the Bible. So I know in other perspectives, like you would debate that. So I guess that's where your question was coming from.
Yeah, so for the purpose of this class, we have been looking at success from the perspective it's being widely published or translated books. Is that right?
Yes, for now. Yeah. So was doing, I think it was Max.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I basically agree on that. It's one of the book that can discern various dispensation and can beat the test of time. If read correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it stands the test of time. That's correct. Any other thought? Any other thoughts? Joe?
Colonialism.
That's interesting. Explain.
Um, Most of the colonizers were Christian professing nations. So, as part of expansion of their territories, they had missionary workers to go back those regions. So they spread Christianity and the Bible across the world.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so you say the role of the missionaries or the evangelists in spreading the Christianity, essentially.
In a simple sense, but yeah, my point still goes to Christianity. Although empowered for Christian lead.
Christian thing. Okay. So did they also have other books that they were
Spread it.
yeah,
I don't think so.
because you said colonialism, not it's not missionary.
Missionary work, colonialism work.
That's why it around, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's like a big factor that is part of the success of the Bible. Is there any other?
So I don't know whether it's supposed to what you're saying,
Mhm.
but so you're asking the success of the Bible not Christianity, and I feel like the reason why the Bible has been as successful as been is because Christianity is the most popular religion. So the popularity of Christianity, the fact that most human beings are Christians compared to other religions, and the Bible being the main book of that religion. And maybe that's I see the success as because it is the main book of great someone
Religion. Okay, that's a point, but I don't know. It looks circular because you say the Bible is successful because of Christianity, and then Christianity is successful because of the spread of the Bible. So count the circle. But yeah, good points. Esther.
I think there are so many ways that the methods that were used to the Bible from the world. I think the reason is that one of the reasons is the future threats.
Future threats.
That according to the Bible. Because like the future, the time of fire. So people have looked at the Bible because those threats, if you don't, there are consequences.
Yeah. So Esther is making the point that the Bible is playing into the feelings of human beings. That it knows that people are will be afraid of certain things. So through that, people are subscribed to the teachings of the Bible. Yeah, which is a point that can be considered. I think there's a lot to say about that. But there's something that no one has said yet, and I think many people usually give this answer. Uh, but let me just get on camping. So we give different points. I don't know whether to write them here, but there's one point that many people will give you, especially out there. I'm going to say it's because of, like, the Bible is God's book and God is powerful. So there's power that accompanies the Bible. I thought this would be the first point. Isn't it logical that because the Bible is God's book and God oversaw its writing and God is powerful. Therefore, the reason why the Bible is successful must be because there's some supernatural power that is um, accompanying the Bible. So, unlike any other book, if I'm going to share the Bible out there because God is the primary author of the Bible, uh, it's going to be very successful. My work is going to be very successful. And I think that's the most common uh, reason out there. So I know, like, we're still putting our finger at Daniel 12:3. You can just keep it there. But I'd like to say, to mention that actually part of this looking keenly into the power behind the success of the Bible is it could be attributed to two things. Either you could say the message, either you could say the message or the delivery. Because without a doubt, the message that the Bible has is powerful, and therefore it's really a factor in terms of the success of the Bible. But another aspect that is often overlooked is the delivery of that message. And I think would benefit if we looked a bit more into this aspect to see how that is a factor that really contributes to the success of the Bible. So, any thoughts so far about delivery? So at this point, I'd like us to consider something. So we said wisdom and teaching are related. And what is teaching? And in terms of the Bible, I'd like to make the point that the Bible is essentially trying to communicate a message, and that essentially is teaching. And what teaching is actually the message is in form of a story. So we can make the conclusion that teaching is actually storytelling. I'd like to make that link. I'd like to say that teaching is storytelling. So if we look at the Bible as a whole, I'd like us to have like an overview of the Bible, and we try and see, because we said we're going to talk about delivery. We try and see how how the Bible communicates its message, and we try and see if we can get insights from that. So in order to do that, I'd like us to share thoughts about um, how this delivery of the message is done in the Bible. So, like David, I know you're a teacher. So, do you think that the Bible has a particular like technique in which it shares the message, um, or it's just like a supernatural power that, because the message is powerful, however it is presented, it's going to be effective. Do you get the question? I'm trying to contrast these two, and I'm saying that the first, um the first, when you think about the power of the Bible being the message, then it doesn't matter how it is delivered, because the message is powerful. It's going to like be effective. And on the other hand, you have delivery as a factor. So I'd like to know your thoughts about this.
Well, I don't think it just because that it is powerful, then it's just going to do its work. But I think that delivery matters a lot to target audience. So I can say that, for example, maybe I use like the Bible can use examples to teach a particular message that we want to.
So you say that the Bible also considers, like delivery of the message, right? Yeah. So I guess it's clear, and it's quite evident, because the Bible actually, I think when it was written, it didn't have chapters. Didn't have verses. It didn't have. I think nowadays some Bibles even go to the extent where they have like topics. So you have uh, within, you could be reading a chapter, let's say Romans, and then you see there's a topic, and it says, okay, now Paul is talking about righteousness by faith, etc., etc. But in the original writings, you didn't have such clues. And for people to be able to, I think they're called editors or editors of the Bible, for them to be able to come back and um, break down the Bible into these sections, it means that the Bible is written in a structural way, and that there's some effort in which the writers did to, number one, understand uh, about how human beings understand subjects. Because if if let's say uh, which book, for example, Genesis is going to be orderly in the way it presents its story, then that means that the writer understood that human beings understand a subject in um, when it's broken down, right? And therefore they wrote in a particular way. So we'll look a bit more into this. But I guess we all get the point that is being made here. So I want to introduce something else that basically repeats what you're going to say, what you're saying. And this is something that we were all taught, so we're going to refresh our memories. Some of us maybe didn't pay attention, but this is something that was taught in high school, I think, in the very first classes that we had for biology, etc. Yes,
See,
yeah,
to be clear, when you speak about the delivery
yeah,
of the Bible, you are talking about how the Bible presents it.
how?
Like delivery, as in how, say, the message or the Bible instruction,
Yeah,
how it's meant to reach us. Like whatever is being said in the Bible, how it is presented to us. Right?
yeah,
Okay. So aside from the chapters and verses, like we also go into the, like we also like include the languages.
the language.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is in
Yes,
delivery.
yeah. I think that plays a part. Yeah. So you you have chapters, verses here. You have language. You have structure. Anything that is not part of the message, anything else is delivery. Yeah, because the message is what the author has in mind, or what God has in mind to give to people, and the process, everything in the process is what we are calling delivery. So we're good. Okay. So back to high school, and I'd like someone to give us the difference between science and art. So you all can't pretend that you don't know, because I know how each one of us went to high school, and in the first biology class or chemistry class, the first topic was what is a science. So what is a science? Anyone? Nick?
one of the and say differences. Science is measurable facts with evidence, and art is observing evidence. You might not measure art evidence by facts.
Okay. Anyone else?
Also to add, science is objective,
Uh-huh.
but art is relative or personal from one person to another.
Good points. Yeah. That's that.
Science is inspired from evidence.
Mm.
It's just evidence.
Yeah. So evidence based on. Anyone else? Any high schooler and former high schooler? Those who finished recently. So yeah, we have mentioned the key differences. Hey, does anyone else have another? I want us to contrast. So if you could say, for example, someone says that science is objective, um, and art is subjective. Is there any other contrasts apart from the ones that have been given? Let's start talk about creativity. So I'll just write them down. So just say subjective. Let me just read this one. So I just said art is subjective. Uh, so the opposite of that is object. Let's talk about creativity. I'm just going to express it differently. So you can say art is in art there is freedom. And then what do you do for science? Against art, right? Then another interesting one is with arts, you have uniqueness. And what happens with science? Science, you have consistency. So that was just a refresher. And I think it's helpful uh, when we look at the subject of storytelling. So the reason why I use this kind of diagram is, storytelling is both an art and a science. Is it clear so far? Any questions? Any questions? So just to explain the same point, you can think of food, for example, or the cooking. I don't know what that field is called. I just tried cooking. And you can apply the same when it comes to food. You can apply the same thing that you're applying to storytelling. You can apply uh, to cooking. So I'd like someone to try and apply what we have here to cooking, because I think everyone is more familiar with the process of cooking. So anyone who wants to give it a try? So if you're trying to apply, you have looked at the differences between science and arts, and we said storytelling is both an art and a science. So I want someone to apply the differences to cooking. John?
Like show how cooking is subjective and also objective.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how to bring out the differences, but you can see how cooking is a science in that, like for example, if you um making matoke,
Yeah.
once you peel the matoke, you know that you need to either put like lemon or maybe vinegar or salt in the water to prevent it from oxidizing, to prevent it from people will just say to prevent it from turning black
Yeah.
or brown. But it's a science what you're doing because you're trying to prevent oxidation.
Yeah.
But now how that is the art part of that is what I can't explain. But I see the science. I can't go like point by point, but I see the science in cooking, which is why maybe some ingredients have to go before other ingredients. But it's a matter of science, but also it's also a matter of art, maybe because of taste. And taste is subjective. One person might think this food is too salty. Someone else might think, okay, this is just enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a really good explanation. Anyone else? Joe? If he was pointing at you and saying you have a point.
I think, yeah, Joy's example is good. I can also link, give another one, yeah, rice, for example. So you cook rice, someone can do vegetable rice, another will do pilau, someone will do fried rice. That is like the art part of it. So you all cooking rice, but the outcomes are like so different. Yeah, the processes of doing them are also very varied. Yeah, but I think the other way of looking at the sun is in the baseline where you start, you need the rice, maybe you have water, you have heat or salt, the things that will be present across all the the forms of rice. Yeah. Yeah. So there's some consistency and then there's also the uniqueness to each outcome that I said.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Anyone else last Nick?
as finding the hard part of it easier to tell by the signs. Why don't you try with Mukali? Where I can see some. So Mukali, um, at the end of that process, itakuwa either imeiva ama haikuiva, which is objective. So for example, if you pick a ugali and then at some point, um, if you remove the meat, ndio restopisha kiasi, and then you realize and then you bring it back. At the end of the day, watu watasema hiyo ugali haivi. Na in fact, check it, everyone will say haivi. Of course, the hard part will be the outcome, whether people say this is sweet, come and the base, do all that. But I don't know if that is science, where everyone will say I believe.
Yeah. So I think the point is made, and there's no need to elaborate it further. But I think Joey, Joe, and Nick basically are saying the same thing, and that is, yeah. When you look at food, you can, like, you can see it in the perspective of science and in the perspective of art. And cooking is both an art and a science. So the science, as was said, is that through experiments and practice, people have come to uh, make certain rules. For example, I know this is especially in terms of baking, and like when people are cooking meats, you know that it's a certain temperature which, if you don't prepare your food in, it's not going to be is you won't have a cake and you won't have meat, for example, and that's the science aspect. And the art aspect, you can see all these three things. Because when now you get into talking about flavor of the food, that is more of the art side, and like freedom and uniqueness. So the same thing applies to storytelling. So I think the point that Nick made, there's a way also in storytelling that we have objectivity. You can, like, you can say that's a bad story or that's bad storytelling, and everyone would agree. So I think looking at storytelling in that perspective leads us to be able to see certain things that we can learn. So time is almost running out. I'll just make some final points. So uh, so now going back to something that we all know very well, we talked about the Bible, but also in the way Jesus taught, we can we can see um, we can see it in this perspective, and we like we're good in parables, but looking at it from this perspective helps us to see that parables are how do I phrase it? I say understanding understanding parables is important. So what this helps us to see is that understanding parables is not only about understanding what Jesus was trying to say, but also parables are a useful tool in not only understanding but delivering the message. So when you talk about repeat and enlarge, for example, which is a tool that is used in understanding the message. So you can say like repeat and enlarge. I think that's the most common tool. So it's not only it not only helps you to understand what a parable is saying in the Bible, but it's also an important tool in communicating and delivering the message. So I think I'll just close in giving examples. We would have looked at a bit into crisis lessons. Maybe you can just read a paragraph. So we can read Christ Subject Lessons, page 20, the paragraph that says, by connecting his teaching with the scenes of life, experience, or nature. Someone can just find it. The exact paragraph is not here with me. Someone there, COL 20. So the paragraph says this: by connecting his teaching with the scenes of life, experience, or nature, he secured their attention and impressed their hearts. Afterward, as they looked upon the objects that illustrated his lessons, they recalled the words of the divine teacher. So, from that quote, you can see that Christ's objective was not just delivering the message, his objective was also securing people's attention, impressing their hearts. So, if that's an objective, then delivery becomes a key tool. And so it shows that uh, he had, he made efforts in trying to understand the nature of humanity, how they're going to accept uh, his teachings in the right way, and therefore he adapted his message to meet that objective. So there's a lot to say about this topic, but maybe I can just close by giving an example of how it's actually very familiar and sometimes we don't pay attention, but so yeah, I think more of our focus usually goes into the arts, but there's a lot to learn about the science. So there are a lot of examples in currently that we can learn from or we can remind ourselves. So if someone could give me a good definition of parables, and because of time, I'll just give one definition. Parables are, like stories taken from everyday experiences and that convey spiritual truth. So if I would just ask this question, apart from the good teachers in the movement, who else do we see that usually apply this principle uh, or this definition a lot? There's a group that really does this. Anyone? Nick? There's a group of people who usually do this a lot. Just like Jesus did. Okay, it might not be exactly the same, but Jesus was using stories taken from everyday experiences to convey spiritual truth. Is there like a group that you know of that usually do this a lot? If we Marks. So nowadays we have like a I think this is usually common in comedy. So you'll find a lot of comedians nowadays. I'm not talking about the kind of comedy that people laugh about random things, but you'll find that a lot of comedians usually uh, do this. They take stories from everyday experiences and they try to communicate some spiritual truths. And because they do this quite often, they have kind of mastered like the art of uh, delivery. So you'll find that a lot of the tools that we usually talk about, like repeat and enlarge, etc., etc., they are on full display. So, and not only this, but there's many other areas, like even in churches and even in the SDA church, for example, you'd have this situation where before the main sermon, you have um, a verse that is usually read before. So that's a form of repeat and enlarge. And the whole aspect is understanding how human beings usually process information. And that's part of the science of storytelling. So I think uh, we can close there for the sake of time. Um, so our class today was looking at Daniel 12 verse 3, and we saw that the wise people at the end of time, uh, the wisdom is connected, and we went into storytelling after discovering that delivery is an important aspect of the success of the Bible. And so we were trying to understand how we can benefit from learning more about more about delivery through the importance of science, looking at storytelling and science. Yeah, so if there are any questions, maybe you can ask them later. And I'd like to stop there. So we're going to close with our document. Let's pray. Dear God in heaven, we thank you for the class that we've just had. And we ask that you be with us and guide us through the rest of the programs of this day, for this prayer in Jesus' name.